G'day, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Giro podcast. I'm joined, as always, with the National Road Champion, Johnny Trevorrow. We've got a bit of feedback.
Not clear at all to me, Dan.
Is that working? Yep.
That's
all good.
Everything you did just then was just jumping.
Underwater.
Yeah, right. Oh, well, of course, we've got Phil Liggett joining us, the voice of song. I'm rattled already. There's feedback, there's mic issues, but we had a big stage of the Giro last night, lads. Stage 4. We knew the conditions were going to be rank. And what were your thoughts, Iffy, on the final proceedings?
Well, Stewie's been big on social media today, telling me he got it right and I got it wrong because he said the breakaway would stay away. It was an amazing day, actually. Absolutely atrocious conditions. A strong breakaway. 25 riders got clear, and they got a bit over 8 minutes. Once the bunch started really chasing towards the end, they closed it really quickly. It didn't look like they're going to get within about 4 or 5 minutes, actually. And at the end, it was just a minute 30, I think, from the winners. And I tell you who I thought was going to win it, the Joker, Chris Jules Jensen. He was away with, what was his name now? The Intermarché guy. And the Estonian. And they had just about a minute on the rest of that break onto the last climb. And I thought Chris was going to win it. And he nearly held them long enough. If he could have just got another K up the road, he would have been able to get over the top with those and probably would have won the stage. But Dombrowski, the American, who was sort of the wonder kid a few years back, won the 211 area. Yeah, 211. No, he won the 211 and was touted as the big star. Went to Sky, and then had all these other issues. But he's back. His 30th birthday today, actually. So 29 when he won that. He's 30 today. But it was a really strong win. He rode clear over the top of the last climb and won alone. Fantastic stage. But the real race, which we'll talk about, was the race for the GC, for the big hitters. Back, and I'll tell you who really impressed me was Egan Bernal. They could be sore back and everything, but he looked the goods yesterday for sure.
What were your thoughts, Phil?
Well, I didn't see yesterday's stage, but I did read up about it when I got back home. I was out all day doing a bit of post-COVID walking around. And, I've known Joe for a long time, Dombrowski, and he's always promised, as John said, he's always promised something. He's never delivered yet. He's ridden the Giro 5 times, finished every time, never abandoned, and finally yesterday he got his win. I made his birthday yesterday, according to my records. It's on the 11th of May. But I didn't see any note of it on the reports I read, but he was 30 yesterday. And he's the first American to win a stage since, if I think rightly, TJ Van Garderen back in 2017. And not many Americans have won stages of the Giro. It's, again, an indication the way this race is happening, and indeed the way the whole season has gone. The racing has been very unpredictable, and I think has been benefited from it enormously because we've watched great bike races. I've watched almost every race this year, all on television, and not commentated on any because of Paris-Roubaix being cancelled. But I've enjoyed every race. The peloton are deep thinking with their favourites, and the escapees, it's paying off. What about Taco van der Hoorn? That was one of the best rides I've seen in years. In a breakaway for about 170 kilometres of 7 men, took his chance about 20k out, got away on his own 17 to go, and he won by about 60 metres on the line. Reminds me of Stuart O'Grady when he lost right on the line in the Tour de France after about a 200 kilometre breakaway. So I think it's been a great tour in the making at the moment. And I think the only one who's lost contention was Almeida. I think everybody else is still in with a shout. We'll know maybe after tomorrow's stage.
Well, if you mentioned before Chris Jules Jensen, here was his comments post the finish line.
It was hard. Definitely a hard day, but it's just about mitigating risk, eh? No, it was a hard day, but actually got a bit of a smooth ride for most of it, but that last climb.
You're definitely the wet weather specialist, though. After yesterday's question.
Oh, yeah. By one, yeah, boy.
You notice
Great effort,
John?
Got to have eyes in the back of your head these days, don't you?
Yeah, but you notice his accent because he was brought up in Ireland. And he's got an Irish accent like Sean Kelly, not quite as broad as Sean, but I didn't know that till I was listening to commentary this week that he'd spent most of his life being brought up in Ireland, educated there. So that's why he sounds like an Irishman now.
And Scotty, a guy, big loser of the day was our mate George Bennett. He lost, I think, what was it, a minute and a half, and they said it was just the cold that really killed him in the end.
No, he lost four and a half, mate. He's done and dusted.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
he was further down. He was, and coming from New Zealand, and obviously graduated from the tourist south, and he should be good.
Okay.
But remember, he's only 3:10 off in the overall, Bennett, right. And you take off the time of Bernard 1:39. He's only a couple of minutes down still, so that could be replaced. But you never know with George. He's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character. He can have a fantastic day and seem to be the finest bike rider in the world. Then he can go a little bit down and lose his place on the overall. So, as I say, tomorrow's a good chance to show you your colours tomorrow on the uphill finish.
Well, Jai Hindley also lost a little bit of time, guys. He came in not too far behind. He came in with Vincenzo Nibali. And I think for Nibali, it just showed, he's only had 3 weeks since he broke his wrist. So it's going to be a real challenge for him, but showing some courage, obviously, just to line up and get through. So we'll see how Jai goes as things progress. Remco Evenepoel, who was coming in as this sort of second favourite, lost a little bit of time, only a few seconds, but I wouldn't put too much into that, actually. I think he's just going to keep getting better and better and better. He's just this incredible level of athlete that the longer it goes, he may actually end up being very good in the third week if he can recover from these races. So it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, so I just had a quick check. It was at 3 minutes and 8 seconds is what he lost, George lost to the leaders, but two minutes, just under 2 minutes to Bernal. So what we had really, you had Bernal, Landa, Ciccone, and Hugh Carthy, who rode really strong. They were the strong groups. They're the ones who've come out of this, looking really, really good. Then Simon Yates, Remco Evenepoel, Bardet, and Dan Martin, just 11 seconds back from the Bernal group. And then you had Nibali, Sivakov, Jai Hindley, and Bookman at 28 seconds back from Bernal. So, not really bad, but the fact that you couldn't go with them is a worry on the first climb of the tour. So tomorrow is going to be a really interesting day because day 6 has got a big 16K climb to finish, plus a monster of a climb in the middle of the stage as well. So that'll be an interesting one.
Johnny, because Landa really backed himself, didn't he? He was the first of the big guys to really go. Ciccone went first on the last climb, but then Landa, of the real favourites, was the next one to hit out. So he showed a lot of confidence by going early. But Bernal, he was so impressive the way he closed the gap down. He looked like, of the big guys, he looked by far the most comfortable.
Yeah, I thought Bernal and Landa were the two standouts because Landa's attack was really brutal, put a big gap in really quickly, and then, as you say, Bernal closed it just as quickly and then got to them. And I thought Bernal was the strongest, but Landa very close to it. Hugh Carthy also bridged part of that alone and looked very good too. So I've actually picked him to get onto the podium after yesterday's performance. I think.
Well, I saw a grab with Landa on Cycling News, and they said, "Oh, you'd have to be considered as one of the favourites now for the Giro after that run." He said, "I thought I already was before the start of the Giro." Like, if that's not confidence. And then they asked me about Simon Yates, and that goes, "I don't know." I look back, and they were all suffering, so I went. So there's a bit of mind games happening early on. Scooter, how important knowing how hard the second and third week is to ride within yourself, because if you burn matches or go into the red in this first week, you're going to be paying big price in that last block.
Well, Stewie O'Grady, I was talking to Stewie today, and he said,
"Who did I ask that question to, John?"
I don't know, who did you ask it to? All of
us. Scotty. Yeah, Scotty.
Oh, did you? Sorry.
You're right.
You can answer, Scotty.
John's gone off dairy milk. He's gone off almond milk, and he's gone on to goat's milk because he keeps butting in.
That's a good one. I remember that one, Scott.
You remember that one? I was thinking exactly the same thing. And look, every stage in all these Grand Tours are always pretty tough anyway. But it was really brutal. That was super cold, wet, really draining on the riders in those conditions. And then those climbs, the last two climbs were really nasty. So it's one of those things. How do you hold back? I don't think anybody really wants to lose any time. And of those favourites that John just, that group of favourites that John just called out, 28 seconds, the maximum of those main riders, that's not much. You can overcome that definitely in the third week of the race. But you've got to also hedge your bets. You've got to make sure that you are patient when you need to be, conserve energy where you need to be. But I think last night, as the first test, was a place where you don't really hold back. I think you just had to go deep. Look, today's stage is pancake flat. It goes in the one direction the whole way. The winds are only going to be about 15 kilometres per hour from the south-southwest. If that's not too bad, then it could be an easy day for the riders. And, these GC guys, they recover so quickly, and that's what they'll be hoping to do on today's stage. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, you also mentioned Hugh Carthy before John butts back in again. Hugh Carthy looked awesome, but I've got to say, he did spend time I'm not living in Bendigo anymore, but I spent a lot of time in Bendigo, and I'll always give it a rap whenever I get a chance. The local bunches there are fantastic. Hugh spent a lot of time, or a couple of seasons, in Bendigo having an off-season pre-season training camp, and look how well he is going at the Giro, yet he didn't stand a chance at getting any of the Strava KOMs when he was in Bendigo. So, that's how strong the Bendigo bunch is compared to the Giro peloton.
There you go.
There you go. Last question we're going to ask you for the day, anyway.
Long bow.
What were you saying about Stewie O'Grady, John?
Well, he was just. We were talking about in answer to your question. He was. He thought it was a brutal stage, and he said, "But this is the toughest Giro he can recall," and he just wondered the tactics of Ineos to put so much effort on in the last 40K to waste Ghana. For what reason? Why did they use all the energy for Ghana? What for what he couldn't put a reason to it, which I don't know either, because he's going to be very crucial in the weeks coming. But he just wondered if first day in the climbs, only stage 4, and they're using a lot of energy.
Yeah, and that's the issue when you do get very excited for these Grand Tours. It's the ability to hold back, and you've seen particularly last year, it's the teams that haven't had to expel a lot of energy and they've just pinched them at the death. So it's going to be interesting, definitely, that second and third week. But looking at the stage, Scotty, you mentioned it before. I think Homer Simpson sort of sums up my initial thoughts when I... Boring! So I've been working on that gag for a while. Pancake flat. Obviously,
if the climb at 36.2 or 35.2, there's a bit of a climb there, and
that's not a climb; it's a shaky pen. The man's been drinking.
It's got the rattles. But obviously, Caleb Ewan, it always takes him a couple of stages to sort of find his rhythm. You'd obviously be thinking he'd have to be a chance, but then you look at the confidence from some of these other sprinters. They've all sort of been getting their trains working. What are your thoughts for this one, Iffy?
Well, we don't know how he's sprinting because we haven't seen him sprint yet. He never actually got the sprint in stage 2. They were too far back, and he finished 10th, but he never actually sprinted. He got dropped 2 days ago when that surprised me, the fact that Viviani was still there at the finish and Gaviria and Caleb wasn't, but he got spat 45k to go. He didn't look comfortable, so obviously he hasn't come right to form, but this is a different story. I would still pick him to win today. I still think he's the quickest guy here if he gets it all together. And Groenewegen probably will have improved a fraction as well. So we're going to have some good sprinters out there. It's going to be a really exciting finish tonight.
Phil, if you had 50 quid just to smack down on the stage, where would you be riding it?
I think I fancy Groenewegen to win today.
Yeah?
I think he's very disappointed with the way the problems panned out. I mean, he served a suspension, you know, for the crash with Jakob, and now there's a little hoo-ha going on in the press and things, and he thought it was all behind him. I think he's an angry man, and he wants to prove a point. He was nearly there. He was third to Tim Merlier, and now we'll see. I think today he probably pull it off and feel a little bit better because of it. He feels pretty badly done to, even though he admits to the problem that caused the crash. Sprinting is sprinting.
Yeah.
And Scooter?
I think Groenewegen got to put money on Caleb, but Tim Merlier, it would be interesting to see. You know, he was fresh legs, fantastic on stage 2 when he won that stage. Went early, no one could get past him. So if he gets a clear run, he'll be hard to beat as well. But we've now had a couple of days in the legs, and after yesterday's tough stage, it'll be interesting to see who bounces back from these sprinters.
Now,
and Viviani too. I mean, Viviani's actually sprinting really well. He's made a couple of little mistakes. He sat back a fraction too long the other day and whatever, but he's actually sprinting well. And he actually did get third. He beat Groenewegen the other day for third. Groenewegen should have got third, but he eased up and then through too late. So
and he said a lot of energy yesterday, John. He was last.
Well, he got spat early as well. But so they gave it to Groenewegen, but then in the photo showed that Viviani got third on day 2. But I think it'll be all those. You can't discount Merlier. I mean, that was a fine stage win on stage 2. Went really early.
So the situation with the show is we've sent a link out to Matt White. He's somewhere obviously on the ground at the start. It was a later start, so we started a bit early today. So what we're going to do is go to a break now with a quick word from Bike Exchange. When we come back, we've got the co-commentators for the Olympics for the Australian coverage. Let's talk commentary. Let's shoot the breeze, and who knows where it's going to go. It's going to be entertaining, so hang around.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Thanks again to our great mates at Bike Exchange. Now, as we said, Phil and Scotty, you guys are going to be commentating together again for the Olympics. You have done since 2012 for the Aussie TV broadcast. Now, I want to start with you, Phil. You must have been obviously gutted like everyone else in the world when you realised that you actually couldn't commentate on the ground in Tokyo. It would have been such an amazing experience to be there live.
Yeah, it would have been. In fact, the only man that's come out of this smiling is Van Avermaet, because he's been Olympic champion for 6 years instead of 4. Apart from that, I think everybody's really disappointed. And I feel very sorry for Tokyo and the organisation, because it will go ahead, of course, in the end of July into August, the Olympics in Tokyo, but there'll be no international spectators. And that really is so sad for Japan, who've built all the installations, and the money comes from the people that go and watch, etc. They'll lose a lot of money whatever way it goes. From my point of view, I was never going to Tokyo on this occasion because of the proximity of the velodrome, and Scott's in the same boat as me, of course. It was too long to drive out to the velodrome from the headquarters of the Olympic Games and back in the same day. You can't put a whole crew out there for 5 or 6 days, which would be a full week, really, for the track event. So it was planned for Scott and I to be together with Anna Mears in Melbourne, and that of course has fallen through the boards now because Australia doesn't want me anymore because of COVID. So I've got to go to London. And about 2 weeks ago, I made the tests in the studio in London. They were surprisingly very good. Scott flew up from his home to Sydney, and I was talking with Scotty just like I am now. We did some role commentary on the races from the Olympics in 2016, which was quite fun to remind ourselves what happened in 2016 and how tough that road race really was for both the men and the women, and it all went well. So as of tomorrow, I have a phone call coming through from Channel 7 to discuss where we go from there. It's not a 100% deal yet, but I think we're now very close. They want me, I want them. It's all about technical aspects. And so hopefully tomorrow we'll sign off on the Olympics. I will do from London, and I'll chat with Scotty, who will be on his third beef sandwich in Sydney.
Now, Scotty, before we go to you guys, we've got Matthew White. He's live, so we don't know how long we've got him for.
Matthew White has never been live. It's impossible.
Yes, here he is.
Gentlemen,
Mr. White.
how are we?
How are you, mate?
Yeah, good.
How are you travelling?
The house.
Yeah, good. It's very, very muggy at the start today. It's been trying to rain, and the weather forecast has changed a few times, but we could have a little bit of wind again today, but certainly better conditions and a lot warmer than yesterday.
Iffy?
What do you think of the wind? Just when there's any crosswinds likely to blow up to make the race a bit more exciting.
There is potential there, Phil, definitely. The strange thing is that the wind is supposed to be coming from the mountains. So how reliable that wind will be, we'll find out. We've got some people in front of the race to make sure we get that information live. But the tricky thing about today is, which may not be so exciting for television, is we've got a very typical Giro run-in on the coast with lots of road furniture and a very technical last 3 kilometres. So it'll be it'll be really nervous final today.
Hey, Waddy, do you have wind meters, or do you go back to the old Julian Dean grass, throw in the air, lick the finger, and then feed that info back?
We are flexible. We do have meters, but the way that Julian used to assess by picking up a bit of grass and that race sense to see which way the grass was blowing was nearly as accurate.
He was like Maximus in Gladiator when he'd rub the dirt in the fingers and that. It was just took years to master that craft.
If you've got the feel, you got the feel.
That's right.
Now, Whitey, I've got to ask you. I mean, really important stage last night for us, yesterday for you. First day to the climbs, and Yatesy was good. He was only 11 seconds back from the other, from who was worried about Bernal and so. But how is he, and what actually happened?
Good. What actually happened? When he went to react at that moment, he was a little bit late to react, and then got caught in between the two groups. And what the television didn't pick up is, so he was after chasing those guys. Then he got caught by the ones behind Evan Poole and Dan Martin and 3 or 4 other guys, and the gap stayed the same until the finish, and he lost 11 seconds there. So yesterday it was those conditions, they were tough, and a lot of guys. The first hit out of it wasn't a mountain stage; it was a sort of a medium mountain stage, but the weather conditions made the race a lot tougher than it may have looked. So it wasn't. Tomorrow's the first big mountain stage, and the way I think that with the marquee and the jersey and the break staying to the line yesterday, I think we're going to see a very, very aggressive start tomorrow, because everyone knows that the Israel Academy or your Startup Nation, they will want to keep the jersey for as long as possible. But also it's a tough start tomorrow, and I think they will be pretty vulnerable in controlling a breakaway to the line. So their objective will be to keep the jersey. Today won't be an issue, but I expect to see a very, very aggressive start tomorrow because of what we saw yesterday and now who is in the Maglia Rosa.
Scooter?
Whitey, with today's stage, off the back of yesterday, looking at the map, it is absolutely dead straight the whole way. Pretty easy for riders to get perhaps a little bit complacent. You know, it's the map actually looks the same as the profile, dead straight, one direction. I think it's 15 kilometres per hour winds or something predicted later in the afternoon. So what's the message that you say to the riders on a stage like this? You know, it could be one of the easiest stages of the tour and a good recovery day, but at the same time, if you don't pay attention, you could miss a split.
Yeah, there's the split, but the other thing there, Scott, is just when you're coming through these towns, especially on the coast, and as we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years, that local councils have put in a lot of pedestrian crossings, different types of boulevards, then just the medium strips and road furniture. So every town they go through will be stressful, even if it is going easy. So you've got to pay attention and stay focused, even on these potentially easy.
Oh, we lost him. I don't know what happened then. He was talking and then he's gone.
That was rapid, wasn't it?
That's the first for the detour. See, this is the danger, Phil, of when you're not on the ground, things like this happen, mate. So he might come back.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
We did have a comment while you were chatting before from Sheila, and she said, I hope they give Phil a bigger closet than the one the Tour de France won you in. That little box there. But I think you got quite used to that setup there. That was good in the end, wasn't it?
It was very cozy, I must say that. We've already gone through that, actually, with Australian television. I don't think they've got any bigger rooms, actually, in the studios we use. They're all pretty much the same because they're not meant to do what we're doing with them. But I will have larger monitors, which is a big bonus because looking on small screens, when all you guys are on your 60-centimetre TVs and then wonder why I don't recognise somebody, you have to see the size of my monitor. And I've got 5 of them, by the way, so I can see everybody else as well. You get used to it.
I never have seen the size of your monitor, Phil. Anyway.
Get used to it. I mean, I actually, by the end of the 3 weeks of the Tour de France last year, I enjoyed working in that studio. Great people around me, looked after me. It was a very bizarre scene, though, putting a mask on to walk outside the room to go to the toilet and stuff.
We had Waddy, and he's gone again.
I think he's in trouble, though.
This is comical. I think sounds tapped in.
Hey, speaking of monitors, guys, so with the way we're doing the commentary with Phil in London and Anna Mears and I in Melbourne, we'll also have a camera on us, and Phil will have an extra monitor to be able to see us, and we'll have the same on him. So normally when you're beside each other and you want to, make a point or do something, you can touch each other or, wave, whatever, tap them, elbow them. Whereas in this situation, obviously, we're in different continents. So we'll be able to wave to Phil. He can wave to us if he wants to jump in so that we don't talk over the top of each other, which, is the biggest no-no when it comes to commentary. So that will be, it's not just a challenge for us. That's what the AFL football, NRL, they've all been doing that here in Australia as well, commentating from different studios around Australia. But this will be, unique for the Olympic coverage to have Phil in London and us in Melbourne. And I know Phil is as disappointed as I am, in particular, about not being at the track in Tokyo, because the atmosphere at an Olympic velodrome, when it's packed with fans, which of course it won't be this time, is absolutely unbelievable. And one of the highlights of either my professional racing career or post-racing career is still being next to Phil at the London Olympic Games when Sir Chris Hoy won the Kirin. It was his last games. He was retiring after it. And, I don't personally know Chris, that well, but just the atmosphere in the London Velodrome when he won was just extraordinary. And that's something that I'm really going to miss.
Well, mate, Chris, I went to the Australian Tennis Open with Chris, but anyway, it's another story.
Oh, righto, John. Phil, does it get harder as the years go on with all these new riders and all the research that's in to get all the names right? How's that process?
Well, getting the names right is always a problem. We finally nailed Pogacar. It took a while. He followed on from Peter Sagan. Even Sagan couldn't say his name for the first few years. We told us so. That's the only thing. You've got to keep on. There's no doubt that cycling from the participant point of view has changed enormously over these last few years. And although we got Joe Dombrowski win the stage of the Giro yesterday, but he was 30 years of age. And we're looking at the youngsters now. And at 30 years of age, if I ride my bike, I'd be feeling very, very old, as in fact it is Nibali. He feels as though he's up against a complete rebellion from the young kids now. So that's different. And you've got to watch your racing every day to see how these guys are coming through. And Evenepoel, who might still be in with a chance of surprising us in the Giro, because he's right there at the moment, he's a name that would already have been at the top, but for his accident in the Tour of Lombardia. So Yeah, that is very important. And of course, don't forget, Olympics normally is every 4 years. And so I really only do track cycling now every 4 years. And so I've got to really work on the track riding. And although I know many of the riders, some of them personally, no, they've got to dig very, very deep to make sure we get sell the right story to the people who are watching. And for that reason, working away from the actual games is very difficult, because we take a lot of our enthusiasm from the atmosphere inside the velodrome, which you sense from the moment you walk in the door. And all the commentators doing something different. Normally I'd see them on the Tour de France. Now we're at the Olympic Games, and we talk old times, and they'll tell us about riders we never watch normally race. Watch out for this girl. She's really, really good. She's come from so-and-so. We're not going to find that out anymore because we won't.
Miss out the scuttlebutt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we love the atmosphere. After all, that's why we do the job. Some would say in Scotty's case, he does it for the money, but I do it for the sheer joy.
Well, we were talking about it the other day about how this is just going to be the norm for a lot of these bigger networks. I mean, NBC, they'd have a cast of thousands, and they would have saved a heap of money last year. And when we were speaking to you on the podcast, the numbers were through the roof. So, cost and reward looks like they'll probably adopt this even if the restrictions did shift, you'd think. I mean, they're still going to send people, but...
Sure, they have. The reporters go there. I can tell you, in fact, that I worked for NBC on the tour last year, which was in September time, and it was such a success. We had our biggest viewing audience for over 10 years, which was incredible. The cost, I'm sure, particularly as they owned the studios in London where I was working from, the cost was minimal. I didn't even get travel expenses. It was too easy. So, they saved a lot of money. It got twice the viewers. So what does that tell you? They took the immediate decision, although they haven't told me this, but I figured they took the immediate decision to do the tour this year from the same point, because they knew that COVID would not be clear. And it was the right call, because you can't go and set the whole thing up, get all your hotels booked, and then knock it off on the head again. That's when you lose money. So I'll be back in London for the Tour de France as well.
Phil, I spoke to your co-commentator for the Tour de France for NBC, Christian van der Velde, and he said a figure something like $7 million was saved by NBC by not going to the tour last year. And if the coverage, and this is the problem that we commentators have, is if you always want to just do the best job you can, make sure that you're delivering for the audience. And if you do a great job when you're not on the ground at the event, and then they save $7 million, you're not going back again. And the bean counters will just look at that and say, well, why would we?
Well, this is the problem. As you know, the tour is coming off NBCSN at the end of this year, as is all sport, as far as I understand it, because NBCSN will go. And we'll probably turn up. The Tour de France is confirmed because there's a contract between NBC and the organisation for the years to come. But many sports in the States will lose their place because the channel's going down at the end of this year. So, yeah. Money, not like the old days working for American television. Money is very tight in America now in broadcast.
Well, one thing that Dave McKenzie brought up that was interesting is they did a survey for SBS, and the majority of viewers voted that they wanted people on the ground, or at least the crew on the ground. And they said, oh, well, that's good enough. So what you might need to do is just pump out a survey, Phil, just to all the American viewers and say, do you want us on the ground? If you really want to go, just go for it.
We put Adam Blythe, the British ex-pro. We rode for Adele. He got on the back of a motorbike, and Adam speaks my language. He comes from where I was brought up. He's a Cheshireite, and near Liverpool. He probably wouldn't admit to it. He was absolute natural, and I don't know, but as far as I know, he's back on again for the Tour de France, and I hope so, because he was just seeing things as an ex-bike rider. The lads knew him. They would come along in the peloton and bang him on the back as they rode past him on the motorbike. They were that friendly. So he was a very good reporter, a natural. So I'm hoping he's back, and he was my lifeline. He really was many, many times out there, because he was my eyes and my mouth when I needed him,
We've had a comment come in from Peter Morris. It says half of Hollywood is in Melbourne shooting movies, but we won't let Phil in. Now, you are a Hollywood star, Phil. You've had your documentary come out Surely you can pull some strings, mate.
Well,
Let me
what
tell
did you
you,
do,
lovely-
Phil? What did you do to get banned? I noticed when I was at the airport the other day, there was a big
Listen.
sign up. It had a picture of a cigarette with a line through it, and next to that was a picture of Phil Liggett with a line through it. So what did you do?
That was you on the stage of the Giro d'Italia, John, many years ago, smoking a fag. I know about that. In fairness, the immigration in Australia are my friends. When I arrive, they always say, "Oh, it's Phil back. Is the racing on again?" And they've always had great conversation. So I've got they've not banned me, but the international travel into Australia isn't allowed from here unless you go through a few hoops. For that reason, I wasn't able to do the Tour Down Under, but hopefully I'll be back in January for the Tour Down Under. Our restrictions to international flying are easing next week, but they're going to the green countries. And that's basically Europe, like Portugal. We can't
get serious, Phil. Get serious, mate. This Tour Down Under stuff. What about the Bay Crits?
Well, we must do those as well, John. But that,
exactly.
Then you might not let me in.
Oh, you're invited. No.
I do have a solution for you, Phil. Matt Damon. So I'm in northern New South Wales, where I am at the moment, and just down the road is Byron Bay. And Matt Damon was filming something in Australia recently, who may still be here. And when he came over, he had to do his quarantine like everybody does, which you would have to do, Phil. But they had him put up in a place just out the back of Byron Bay. Very nice, bit of a ranch, beautiful place. About $100,000 a week, I think, was the cost of this place that Matt had his family in. So we just need to sort that out for Channel 7, get this $100,000 joint for you, and then you can come out a couple of weeks before the Olympics. You'll be fine.
Well, that's the problem, though. I'm already calling the Tour de France, and the period isn't there for me to transfer from the Tour to the Olympics and serve the quarantine. That's the real crux of the matter. If there was no Tour de France, I could come out second week of July, put my feet up, pay my $100,000, enjoy life, and then go and cover the Olympics with you, Scotty. But it doesn't happen. But
it'll only be a quarter of your contract for the games as well with Channel 7.
Well, this is true, yeah. But after the phone call tomorrow, I think I'll be on half fee. Who knows?
Well, Matt Damon is in Australia because he did a live cross yesterday from a local TAB on the Today Show. And they had all the screens up, the Dapno dogs. Yeah, he loved it.
If you've served your time, you can go out in amongst it all, you know. That's absolutely. You mentioned, though, about the Phil Liggett, the Voice of Cycling film, the documentary, which is now on general release in Australia. And the other week, this is a lovely story from my point of view. The other week, we did a showing in Mornington on the peninsula there outside of Melbourne, by Arthur's Seat, where John is always having his bike races. And I did a Q&A after the show, linked in by the cinema, full screen, and I could see the audience. It was fantastic. And so they'd all enjoyed the film, which made me rather happy. And then the third guy to stand up and ask a question of me, he said, "Hi, I won't give you his real name. I'm Mark from New Zealand. I just want to say I've always admired your commentary, but until I saw your film, I hadn't realized just how much you do for conservation of the wildlife of both Africa and Australia. And I want to give you $10,000. And I had a bad line. I thought he said, I said, "Excuse me, did you say $10,000? He said, "Yes," because his line back was not so good, but he could hear me perfectly. So guess what? This morning, $10,000 has arrived for distribution to the charities in Africa. And when I finish this blog, I'm sending money over across to South Africa to help with the rhino situation over there. And so
fantastic.
I was speechless. It's difficult to make me speechless, but I just didn't know how to react. And he just calmly said, "I want to give you $10,000. And I just couldn't believe it. And the money's arrived this morning. It exchanged at £5,530.
How is it all going over there with the rhino situation at the moment?
Well, COVID has been actually a bonus because with no international flights out of South Africa, they can't get the horn out to Vietnam or China or even the United States. And so there's been no reason to poach it because they couldn't do anything with it. But now they've released a little bit, so it's getting a little bit easier. And there's a rumor that the poaching has started again. All I can say is the area where my charity is, touch wood, we haven't lost an animal for a year now. And that's pretty much a record. So we're very happy.
What do you know what the numbers are? Do you have off the top of your head? Do you know what the sort of numbers of the white rhino is?
Very low. Looking back 10 years ago, we had 12,500 at least the white rhino. There's a few black rhino, but on the trouble is the authorities will not give you the real figures. There's corruption within the authorities, particularly of the Kruger Park, and so there's no real figures coming out. But having driven the Kruger many times, knowing how many rhinos I used to see, how many I find now, I put the figure at the time to 3,500. And just of late, I've heard the rumours that figure is down to 2,500. So we're fighting a battle, a big battle. We have a rhino orphanage, which I also look after, well, not look after, but on the charity. And fortunately, the animals are being saved because they don't take the baby rhino, but the baby rhino needs mum, and they kill mum on the spot. And when we find her dead, the young rhino is squeaking and nowhere to go, won't leave the side of his dead parent, and we get those into the orphanage and we bring them up, and then they go back in there. It's a terrible story.
Have you been able to, obviously with COVID, but when will we be able to go back to South Africa?
Hopefully. I was actually running a mountain bike event for VIPs in a big super game reserve in the Eastern Cape in August. We cancelled it last year because of COVID, and we will have to cancel it this year with no choice. But it will go in April next year. And but what I'm doing, and this is terrific, I've got involved with an app known as Fulgaz, FULGAZ.com, named after young Paul, by the way, always saying he was going full gas. And we filmed around this beautiful game reserve, sits on 55,000 hectares. We've got all the big five there. I was going to take our mountain bikes amongst them with all these VIPs. That'll come next year. Now, the local rangers have filmed the whole route. And now Fulgaz, it's a virtual app, of course, but the pictures are real. So now you get on board, you pay, I think it's $40, which goes straight to the charities. And you ride on the 4 occasions. I'm going to bring on some pro cyclists and people that know what they're talking about on rhinos. And we'll all ride together around the estate on the smart trainer, and I'm be interviewing the guys on the way. So John, I'll expect to see you on board. Get your $40.
Yeah, how do people get involved, Phil?
It's being actually firmed up today. We've done the 30-second trailer. Then it'll be put out on Twitter and Facebook. If you can't wait, you go to Kareka.com, which is the website. Kareka is spelled Kariega. And that's,
when you get that link, send it through to us, mate, and we'll put it on the detour.
Thank you, I will, because we're going to have fun. My next call is probably going to be to 1 or 2 cyclists. Say, guys, you've got to help me out here. Who cares about the Giro d'Italia? Get on my app. And
so it was Kariega.com, is that right?
I think it's .com, but it's Kareka Game Reserve, and it'll come up.
Okay, all right.
It might be .co.
Yeah, I think my mate Vaz was going on that ride with you, Phil. Is that correct?
Sorry?
I think Vaz was going on that ride with
Vaz,
you.
Vaz has been absolutely brilliant. We asked his opinion. He can't get out yet to South Africa because the country don't fly there. So he paid his deposit 2 years ago, and I still got his money, and he doesn't want it back. So he will be coming next year now. And so is everybody else. We because of the size of the reserve, and we wanted every camp they had. They're all luxury camps, and you'd love this, John, because even the beer and the wine's included in the price we charge, which is not unreasonable.
Wow!
And all the donation to the reserve is included in, and my charity. And it will happen next April. I will go along with Trish, and we've got the Rangers queued up. They will ride back and front with rifles, and they will guide us to the safe parts of the reserve. And you don't have to ride. If you bring your wife, for example, they get the game riding behind on the game vehicle in the viewer, where the ranger will explain everything they see. We have a boat trip on a river which runs through the whole reserve. It's going to be fabulous. It's only 6 nights, but it'll be very, very special. A lot of my old friends have said yes.
Phil, do say hello to Trish, because we did see just before the door opened in the background, so we know she's home. Say hi to her for us. But
we actually just have a friend call who we met at the World Championships in Harrogate in 2018, and we haven't seen her since. Just popped up on the doorstep. And so and they're actually talking about this very trip I'm telling you about right now. So
that's great. I have a logistical question for you about that mountain bike ride. Is it advisable for anyone that does that ride to stay in the middle of the pack? Because I would imagine that the big cats would try and pick off anyone that's at the front or at the very back.
Well, that's what lions do, you know. They sort of they take one out the pack and then they surround it, and then the lionesses move in and they make you run, but you'll never outrun the lioness at full pelt. Something like that, Scott. Yeah, you'll be fine. My boys are well trained. You'll be fine. And you don't have to do it, of course. You can stay on the back. But and we've got great talkers too, the guys that know all about the rhinos and the lions. They'll love it. They'll love it.
Hey, Phil, we're talking about your doco, obviously, but I was talking to Iffy yesterday on the show, and there was a bit of hype around Bradley Wiggins putting his hand up and saying, that's it, I'm doing a film. It's going to come out next year. It's going to cover the 10 years. And he sounds, I think, the last 12 months, I mean, he's sort of morphing into, he went from sort of this Noel Gallagher or Liam Gallagher type. Now he's got this real hard edge. There's photos of him in the pipe jacket. He's got the tats. He's got the bunger. I think he's going to really tee off, and this doco could be this could be huge.
It will, you know, Bradley, it's going to be controversial anyway. I mean, his life has been very much up and down since winning the Tour de France, and as I think he's still separated from his wife, etc. He looked very different. I saw him for the first time on television 2 days ago because he's working on Eurosport with a full beard and a bald head, and I'll be honest, I didn't recognize him till he spoke. And crikey, this is Bradley. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. He's gone through his ups and his downs. Yeah, all I can say is it'll be controversial. I've never actually spoken to Brad since just after he won the Tour de France in 2012. Our paths never crossed. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Is Guy Ritchie going to direct this? Because this sounds like more of a lock, stock, and two smoking barrels or a snatch for sure.
It could well be. Your guess will be as good as mine. But he lets these snippets drop out in the press. Watches, I'm sure, with a smile on his face when he sees how they bite. We'll see what comes out. Yeah.
Does it get much press in the UK? Do they drum it up still?
I personally haven't seen it, but you're talking to a man who's never bought a British newspaper for over 14 months. So maybe.
Well, there you go.
I wouldn't know.
Scotty?
Just on Brad, I've had a couple of chats with him in the last 18 months, really, just through social media conversations going on between the two of us. And he has had a really up and down period over the last couple of years in particular. So I am interested to see how this movie does play out, because it hasn't been straightforward for Brad. You know, it wasn't just this fairy tale trip of win the Tour de France. You know, he loves the sport. He is actually an historian of the sport. He loves it. But there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that he's really been having to deal with. And being in the UK, like if he was an Australian athlete, he might be able to go through it. But in the UK with the tabloid press, it just would not be fun at all. So I do feel for him. He has had a tough time.
Yeah, totally agree, Scott. Yeah.
There was another comment that came in from Dave the Diesel Adderley. He said, has Brooks from the Shawshank Redemption been around to give John a book yet? Set dressing is on point. That is a brilliant comment, Diesel. Love it.
Brooks
Okay.
You want a book?
I get the point. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add in there, Iffy?
No, look, it's great to have a chat, Phil. And yes, the contract's in the mail for the Bay Quits January 1. So, and
the first one.
It will be a while. And Jerry has also said that we're going to have New Year's Eve together again. So we'll get. Well,
we're desperate to get back. Our life has been. I've not been to London Airport, which was my second home, since last May. In the next 10 days, it'll be exactly a year. Where has that year gone? I have no idea, because we've been kind of locked down since we got back. Life has changed.
Last time we saw you in the flesh, Phil, I got stitched up because Jerry said he'd organised this roast for Phil. And I thought, sweet roast. I'll get the one wood out and, give him a bit of a clip. So I got a chance to speak early, and I got up there and said, was lucky enough to visit Phil in 2007. And I saw something I haven't seen since, and that was at Phil's local bar, and he shouted a round of drinks. I said, he wouldn't leak in the bath, old Phil. And all I could hear was cutlery on plates. And like no one laughed. And they'll see Phil looking at me. And then I was like, what's going on here? And then everyone, all the speakers were just sucking up the bum the whole time.
I know.
Afterwards, I said, Jerry, that was meant to be a roast. That was the only bloke that gave him a clip. He goes, no, Dan, I said it was a roast. Like we had roast lamb and veggies.
Well, we were all friends together, and that was actually, I didn't realise what was going on. And when I walked in, Jerry had brought so many friends from around Australia to that lunch. That was a very special
day.
Yeah. Well, I hope I didn't offend you, mate. It was just a joke. Yeah.
Hey, well, and I know I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that. Look, it's always for me. It's been an absolute privilege to work with you, Phil, and to that Chris Hoy race, the Kieran that he won, was one of those things where I looked across at you just to make sure that you were mid-sentence. So, and you didn't need me anyway. You could have just kept going without me. But when I knew you were mid-sentence in commentary, then I took my headphones off because I just wanted to hear the atmosphere within that London Velodrome. So to go through that, watching him, listening to it, sitting beside you, for me, it's been just an absolute privilege. I do have a question for you before you go, though. Just on the Giro, we know, you're so well known for commentating the Tour de France, but what stories do you have of time spent commentating or working on the Giro d'Italia?
Do you know what? I used to do the Giro in its entirety 3 months after the race for a video. And I used to voice in hotel rooms around the world. But I've very rarely been to Italy. And I certainly have never been to the Giro d'Italia. A bit like Sean Kelly in that respect, because Sean never rode the Giro d'Italia. But it's a wonderful race. And I feel it's a big loss in my life, to be honest, because, okay, the Tour de France was what everybody knew and understood. And I'm very privileged and happy to have said over the 48 years that I've really spread the word of the Tour de France to the English speaker. But I would have loved to have gone. I think the Italians have the finest lifestyle of us all. And I think their racing is terrific. And I like the Italians very much. But sadly, my life never took me to Italy. And that's the way it is. But I think we're in for a great Giro this time, Scott. And I think it'll be a good one.
I can tell that you've got a lot of regard for the Giro, because even your lamp up behind your head there, Phil, has got the Giro pink. So it's a sort of the Mayo Rosa lamp.
That's true. Yeah, but that was put there in 1982, John.
And Phil, you talk about doing the Giro commentary, for that, package months after. I don't think people realise how hard that is. Like I've actually been putting together. We had the Grafton to Inverell last weekend, and I've only just finished today doing the highlight show that's going to be on SBS next weekend for that. The week before we did the Melbourne to Warrnambool. And it is so much better and easier to do live commentary 100%, compared to this 100%. Post-produced stuff. A 3-week 100%. Grand Tour, that must have been terrible for you to do.
It is, because a lot of things happen. And sometimes you might say a performance of a guy that he did after he rode the Giro, you're actually talking about. It was in the future. So you've got to be extremely careful. You have to remind yourself exactly which year it is, and forget the fact that he died 2 years down the road, because he's not there here. And it's a challenge. And of course, when you go to a studio, it's paid time by the minute. The guy's in a hurry, doesn't want to spend more than 3 or 4 hours recording studio costs. So he doesn't want to just take half an hour out while you check everything. Just go, just get it done, just go. It's Paul Sherwin and I had many a laugh, but we all occasionally looked at each other and said, what? But the tapes were great, and the Giro is a great race. So I'll tell you one quick story. Andy Hampson, what it means. The Giro means so much to the Italians, just like the Mayo. I think it means more, the Maglia Rosa, to the Italians than the Mayo Jaune does to the French, because they're absolute nutters on the sport in Italy. And when Andy Hampson finally won the Giro, overnight he became an unbelievable superstar. And I was riding with him in Italy, funnily enough, on the rare occasions I went cycling with Andy Hampson. And he says, Phil, I want to take you to this prosciutto guy with all his legs of pork hanging up. And he walked in, and because he was Andy Hampson, this guy, he's unbelievable. And he was bringing down the best sides of meat that we could buy off him, and he gave it to Andy. And that was in 88, I think it was, when Andy won the Giro. And we were now looking early 2000s. And Andy now lives back home in the States. Unbelievable, never forgotten situation. Andy Hampson can't go anywhere in Italy because he won the Tour of Italy. So
was he going nuts for Andy, or was he going nuts? Oh, Phil Liggett, you bloody beauty.
It does happen on occasion, but not on this one.
Good stuff. All right, before we let you go, boys, final prediction for today's stage. Who you think's going to win again?
Ooh.
Iffy? Caleb? Yep. And
Well, I've had to say Groenewegen because that's where my 50 pounds has gone, according to Scotty. But Caleb is the guy that, if he wins, he'll make it look so easy. He reminds me of Robin McEwen. He finishes suddenly from nowhere. He's on the front, and he's a sensational sprinter. Forget the first day. You make two. Everybody wants the front. It's highly dangerous. It's a risky business. And so Caleb, I think, kept his nose clean. It might be a different day today for him, but I fancy Groenewegen.
All right, and Scotty?
I have to go for Mark Ewan's son, Caleb, and Mark was a former guy I used to race with, his dad. So I've got to go for his son, my old mate's son, Caleb Ewan, for sure. Little bit of useless trivia for you, as I like to throw in. The finish tonight is in Cattolica. It's on the coast, just south of Rimini. It's also the birthplace of Marco Simoncelli, who was a former MotoGP rider who tragically passed away in 2011 at the Malaysian Grand Prix when he crashed, and his best friend, Valentino Rossi, ran over the top of him, and that's what killed him, unfortunately. So, former MotoGP rider Marco Simoncelli is from this place.
Well,
to finish on a downer.
Oh, well, no, I can finish on a...
let's finish on a high note.
Tell us a joke.
When I rode the Giro back 40 years ago, I remember Modena, where the stage starts today, because that's the home of Lambrusco, the famous sparkling red. I wiped myself out on Lambrusco.
Oh, no. Well, you would.
Of course you did.
And you probably got up and won the stage. Only you and Jack did.
No, I didn't win the stage. But anyway, I thought you might like that. And keeping it relevant, so as you say, what's the name of the town? Cattolica. It's just down the road from where we lost Alan Lang in a nightclub incident about 15 years ago. But anyway,
I think we've told that story on the show before, and we almost lost our podcast license, I think. It was good times. Well, thanks again for being on the show, Phil. You're an absolute superstar. Thanks again, Scotty.
Well, I wonder whatever happened to Matty White.
I know.
I don't know.
The
stage is starting right about now, so I think he might have to go and do his job, I guess.
All good.
Well, thanks again, mate. And we'll close now with your voice again for the closing credits. It sort of freaks me out when we have you on the show. So enjoy. See you later.